Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness! Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant! Oh, he hit it! jamorant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On today's episode, I'm going to go over some of the latest Grizzlies news, talk about the latest draft intelligence and reports as it relates to the prospects and the Grizzlies, look a little bit more at the Grizzlies' salary situation and some potential trade and free agency situations. Basically, going to go over everything we need to talk about a few weeks ahead of the NBA draft. Before I get into it, just a reminder, if you want to support the creation of this show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you join the Patreon, you get access to bonus episodes. I do at least one bonus episode a month just for the patrons. Also, you can join the Slack channel. You can also play various games that have prizes all year long. Anyways, if you want to support this show, get access to exclusive bonus content and the Slack channel. That's at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right, let's start with updating some of the latest news about the draft prospects that might be available for the Grizzlies. The most notable thing that I'm observing on the big boards and the mock drafts from the primary draft people is there are a few guys slipping that could be available for the Grizzlies. Those guys are Ron Holland, Nikola Topic, and Rob Dillingham. Now, I don't know what's behind the slide for Dillingham and Holland, but the Topic news is kind of based on some concrete information that came out. One, it was discovered that Topic has a partial tear of his ACL. He'd already had some injury concerns before that, so he's obviously injured. That's going to make him slide in draft boards. Also, his measurements were not as advertised. There was some rumors of him having a 7-foot wingspan. Well, he measured with about a 6'6" wingspan. That's a drastic difference. So all of a sudden, this not great shooting point guard prospect, who's still very, very young, turned out to be maybe not as athletically gifted, or didn't have the best measurements that they thought he was going to have. And then also he has this injury. So what that means, a couple things for the Grizzlies. One, I think primarily it means that maybe one of the guys that we thought was going to be there on the board for the Grizzlies at 9 will not be there anymore. Because I think it seemed like a safe bet before this information that Topic was going to go in the top 8. A lot of people had him mocked going to the Spurs. They thought that was a very Spursy fit. Well, now one of those guys that maybe you wanted or that you hoped was going to slide down is likely not going to slide down to you if you stay at 9. The other aspect of it is, well, now Topic might be available for you at 9. I mean, I'm not very interested in taking a possibly injury-prone non-shooter to maybe, whose ceiling for the team would be backup point guard. But of course, I'm a draft amateur, and maybe this guy turns out to be a great pick, and that would be the best use of resources to bring him in. But that, I think, affects the Grizzlies and their pick at 9. As far as like Ron Holland and Rob Dillingham, I mean, I like what I've seen from Ron Holland. My last episode with Brian Schroeder, he talks about just his unbelievable motor and his defensive and athletic abilities, and that's enticing despite the unpolished offense. Dillingham, he seems to be tumbling down mock drafts and the draft big boards just because of maybe the measurements of the combine, where he turned out to be pretty small. Maybe a lot of teams aren't thinking they want a smallish scoring guard. It doesn't necessarily seem like the best fit for the Grizzlies' current roster makeup, but if that's the best player available, maybe the Grizzlies could consider it. But The latest mock drafts and the latest intel about what the Grizzlies might be considering, it's all over the place. And I don't know how much of this is accurate or reflects like a smokescreen for the team to get people off the scent. I mean, they've been very obvious and outspoken that they want a big this offseason, but maybe it's not in the draft. We still see these things about the Grizzlies being interested in donovanclingan. There's the report that the Grizzlies are interested in trading up with the Rockets to get the third pick to target donovanclingan. I find this particular rumor to be kind of hard to believe, just because I have no idea what the Grizzlies would offer the Rockets to move from 9 to 3. I don't think the Grizzlies have any players that they could include that they're willing to move that would take the Grizzlies from 9 to 3. Like, I cannot imagine the Grizzlies including Gigi Jackson in that deal. I mean, maybe what if you included Marcus Smart and there's like a Ime Udoka Marcus Smart reunion? I don't see that at all for a lot of reasons. One, I'm not sure what the matching salary from the Rockets could be. I mean, they could put together some bad matching salary if they wanted to. They got the Jock Landale and Jeff Green contracts they can pick up. But like, from the Rockets perspective even, you're going to have Fred VanVleet, Marcus Smart, and Dylan Brooks at the same time? I mean, defense could be awesome, but those are three of the least effective shooters in the NBA. I don't think that would really work. And then you think about like maybe the Grizzlies could offer draft compensation. I mean, maybe. Like the 9th pick and a future first for the 3rd pick. One, I don't think that gets it done. So I find this trade rumor to be kind of unbelievable. I also still have difficulty believing the Grizzlies would trade up for Clingan. I don't know, like the Clingan thing. Yes, he would fill your center position. Yes, he is some approximation of Steven Adams because of his size, but I still have a lot of questions about the Grizzlies focusing on a big who's a non-shooter, who isn't really that much of an offensive threat. I think with jamorant specifically, I think this team is going to target getting maybe more offensively gifted bigs. I could be totally wrong, and they think just having that screener, that rebounder, and maybe eventually he develops into like a Brook Lopez floor spacer. But everything that we've seen from the Grizzlies in years past is they draft to get people who have the ability to possibly shoot. And then also there's all the news about the assistant coaches, and we don't have any new updated news. But like the one guy they hired, Noah LaRoche, he's apparently known for a system of offense where everyone on the court can dribble, pass, and shoot. And maybe they're interested in this like futuristic, quote unquote, futuristic offense where there's fewer pick and rolls. Like you don't run pick and rolls. Everyone's a creator. Everyone is a gifted scorer, and it's free flowing offense. That doesn't sound like a fit for donovanclingan necessarily. But all of this, of course, is just conjecture. I think because of that report too about the Grizzlies trying to trade up, with the Rockets to get the 3rd pick to take donovanclingan, people started dreaming up like 3-way deals between the Nets and the Rockets and the Grizzlies, because apparently the Rockets still covet Mikal Bridges. The Nets asking price for Mikal Bridges is still very, very high. I mean, I think the Rockets situation is they're willing to move Jalen Green. Maybe they don't want to pay Jalen Green his next contract. But even if we think about a 3-way deal, I have difficulty imagining the Grizzlies assisting the Rockets in getting Mikal Bridges, even if it got you donovanclingan, although maybe the Grizzlies don't mind assisting teams. They've currently assisted the Boston Celtics, who are in the NBA Finals and looking very, very good. Of course, the Marcus Smart trade helped the Celtics get Porzingis, and then the picks that the Grizzlies sent to the Celtics were used. One of them was used to acquire Drew Holiday. So the grand tradition of the Grizzlies assisting teams that might end up winning the title continues. We got Pau Gasol and Marc Gasol, and now maybe the Marcus Smart deal becomes part of that Grizzlies legacy. Now, as far as other mock drafts, the Ringer, as in Kevin O'Connor, he actually has the Grizzlies taking Kel'el Ware at 9, which I think is interesting because before I talked to Brian, I wasn't sure anyone was okay with that happening. And then I released that YouTube video on Sunday night. Then it feels like this week, a lot of people talking about the Grizzlies maybe considering Kel'el Ware. And then on the Ringer, they have the Grizzlies actually taking Ware at 9 in that mock draft. Dillingham and Ron Holland both still on the board. Yahoo has the Grizzlies in their updated mock draft taking Dalton Kennard. That's also what ESPN and Jonathan Givony have. If the Grizzlies would take Kennard, I just don't know. I mean, obviously the offensive punch seems like a great fit for the Grizzlies, particularly if they move on from Kennard, but he's so old. And the history of guys being 23, taken in the lottery, being successful is basically very, very short. I mean, best case scenario, Cam Johnson. I mean, I'd be thrilled with that, but not a huge upside pick, so I don't know if that's very accurate. Bleacher Report has Cody Williams going to the Grizzlies at 9. Again, I don't know if any of these things are sourced. They just feel like guesses to me, but that's another one where Ron Holland would be available for the Grizzlies. Also, Dillingham. Dillingham was taken, I think, 11th in the Bleacher Report mock draft. Now, as far as other intel, and speaking about Jonathan Givony, who also had Dalton Kennard going to the Grizzlies at the 9, Givony has some information on ESPN about players the Grizzlies might actually be linked to and or have some interest in. He mentioned that the Grizzlies have expressed some interest in Devin Carter. They think Devin Carter's maybe the top of where he could go would be 9th. He's also said same for Zach Edey. The highest Zach Edey could possibly go would be to the Grizzlies, who apparently have shown some interest in him. He also says the Grizzlies have been linked to Tristan da Silva and Johnny Furphy. Now, it would be shocking if the Grizzlies took these guys at 9. A lot of this kind of maybe seems like, oh, maybe the Grizzlies would trade down. I think also notably the guys that Brian Schroeder mentioned to me that he thought would be good fits on the Grizzlies, the big men, Yves Missy and Kel'el Ware. Givony has those guys at 24 and 25 on his big board. Now, thinking about some of these names, Johnny Furphy, Tristan da Silva, Zach Edey, and then even the bigs, Missy and Ware, all of that screams, well, maybe the Grizzlies could trade down. I think it's possible the Grizzlies would be willing to trade down. Finding the exact trade down partner, that becomes, again, I think difficult in this draft. I mean, one of the wildest ones would be like, what if you moved all the way down and picked up an extra pick? Like from the Knicks. The Knicks had the 24th and 25th picks, but I couldn't even come up with a fake trade that makes sense to me, where the Grizzlies would give the 9 to New York for 24 and 25. Like, that's way too big of a drop down. And then you're not even guaranteed the guys you might like Furphy, da Silva, Missy, and Ware, possibly all gone by pick 24. I do think it's interesting when you look at some of these trades that we've pitched before about center prospects, where you could theoretically trade down. Like, again, maybe the pipe dream for some of us is like the Jarrett Allen trade. If you trade 9, if you offer, say, Marcus Smart in the 9th pick, could you get the 20th pick and Jarrett Allen back from the Cavaliers? At 20, possibly you could get Ware or Missy or Furphy or Tristan da Silva. I don't know if that's a fair offer. I mean, maybe the Grizzlies, if you offer 9 and 39, could you get Jarrett Allen and 20 from the Cavaliers? I'm not sure. Also, this comes back to the whole like interesting situation the Grizzlies are in and the different avenues they can take. Because I think, to me, the hardest thing the Grizzlies have to decide, and this is probably one of the hardest things front offices have to deal with, is kind of deciding how aggressive to be and whether you should be the team that initiates a big deal, or if you should kind of lay back and then try to make a move where you pounce based on another deal. The idea being, like, on the one hand, what if you were super aggressive? What if you offered the 9th pick and the 39th pick to the Magic for Wendell Carter Jr. and the Magic's 18th pick? Maybe with that 18th pick, you could get Tristan da Silva. Maybe you could get somebody else you really, really like. You also obviously pick up Wendell Carter Jr. Let's just theoretically say the Magic would be in favor of that. You're paying maybe a premium to get Wendell Carter Jr., who is a very average center. That would be an aggressive move. A non-aggressive move could be, hey, the Raptors, they brought in Zach Edey for a workout. If the Raptors draft Zach Edey with the 19th pick, Well, why do they need Zach Edey and Jakob Poeltl and Kelly Olynyk and Chris Boucher? Maybe I'll see who takes an Edey or another center, and then I'll try to get that team's center. And it might be that the acquisition cost of Jakob Poeltl after the draft is really, really low. Again, compare like trading for Jared Allen before the draft, price very, very high likely. Let's say another example that I've mentioned before, it could be like the Hawks with the first pick. They take Alex Sarr. Now they have Sarr and Okongwu and Capella. They don't need all those players. Possibly, even if the guys aren't that good in your mind, like Okongwu or Capella, the acquisition cost to get them is very, very low. So you have to balance, I think, whether you make an aggressive trade where maybe you pay a premium or you even overpay to get the guy you want, or you wait to see what happens. Maybe there's a trade where the Rockets and Nets do make a deal. Let's say the Rockets are successful in acquiring Mikal Bridges. Maybe you then come and scoop up somebody else the Nets don't really need anymore, like a Dorian Finney-Smith, and you get that player for very, very cheap. I would say the Marcus Smart trade, you would think it was sort of something like this, where you pounced when the opportunity arose. But then again, you also kind of paid a premium. So I'm not sure how to quantify or how to classify the Marcus Smart trade, how it fits into these two categories of, was it aggressive to go and get the player you wanted? I mean, 2 first-round picks and Tyus Jones feels like either a fair price or an aggressive price. Or was it only Marcus Smart was only available because the Celtics were able to make this deal to get the guy they wanted in Kristaps Porzingis. Another way to look at it is just to consider, you have trade options to make your team better. Then you also have free agent options. I made a post on social media where I was joking around. Like, you have an aggressive move you can make, Marcus Smart in the 9th pick for Jared Allen, theoretically, or you could try to sign Goga Bitadze, a guy who might play 15 to 20 minutes a night for you, who just bolsters your overall big man rotation. Both of those outcomes, for me, I'd be excited about them. I'd be happy with both those moves. One, a very splashy, aggressive trade. The other, a very modest free agent signing. Both of those avenues could make your team better. Of course, if you just sign Goga Bitadze or Jalen Smith or Daniel Tice, maybe you get them for close to the minimum. Maybe you use your taxpayer mid-level exception, pay them less than $5 million per season. And then, of course, you could still use your 9th pick. You could still get someone who you're excited about, who has a very, very high ceiling. So, trying to decide which one of these options is the best way forward seems extremely tough for me. Now, when I look at some free agent options, which is something I've been doing, and of course, if the Grizzlies don't maybe address all their needs in the draft, the draft, like many people say, like Brian said on my last episode, the draft is for best player available. Free agency is for filling team needs. Now, the issue the Grizzlies, of course, have is they are over the salary cap. They are close to the luxury tax. Right now they're over the luxury tax. The big situation with Luke Kennard is trying to navigate either getting below the luxury tax or at least getting below the first apron and definitely staying away from the second apron. So when you think about free agency, a lot of it is going to be who can we get for the minimum, or if Robert Parra is willing to pay a good amount of luxury tax, who can we get for the taxpayer MLE? Now, the way it relates to the Grizzlies and their decision for Luke Kennard, the decision which has to be made in just a couple weeks from now, the decision I keep coming back to is I find it unlikely they pick up his option, just because, one, if you don't pick up his option, it gets you comfortably away from the first apron. Also, you have a lot of other decent options you're happy about in your depth chart with jamorant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, and Vince Williams Jr. in the backcourt. Would it be good to have Luke's shooting? Of course. It would be great to have Luke's shooting. But then when I look at what his cost is, and his player option is for almost $15 million. And then when I start thinking about if we don't pick up that option, the Grizzlies actually could get enough out of the luxury tax where they could use, to my math, it looks like they could use almost their full MLE. Once you use that MLE, you then become hard capped at the first apron, which is $178 million or so for this next season. I don't think the Grizzlies are scared about being hard capped at the first apron. I have, again, difficulty imagining them spending much more than that. But I think when we try to decide whether or not you should bring Luke back, and either like maybe you decline him and let him walk, or you decline the $15 million option and then re-sign him to something that makes less. I think that is definitely a okay way forward, because what I think about is some of the other free agents that you could possibly get if you decline that Luke Kennard team option. Some of those guys, and these are guys who I don't know exactly what they're going to make, but I think it's worth considering. Like, would you rather have Luke Kennard for $15 million, or I'm not going to list a bunch of guys who are free agents. I'm going to list both shooting guards and small forwards and maybe some even bigs, because I think to make an informed decision about picking up Luke Kennard's player option, you have to consider what else could you use that money for. And if the Grizzlies are able to get enough under the luxury tax where they can use that MLE, and it looks like they can. Again, even counting the 9th pick in the draft, even counting that salary spot, we have 13 players under contract, not counting Luke Kennard. And to my math, they are at least $12 million under the first apron. So let's say you could sign one of these guys for $12 million per season. I think that maybe that's a fair price for Luke Kennard to bring back. I don't think it's the most pressing need, but here are the players. Some of these players are going to make more than $12 million per year. Some of these guys are going to make the minimum. Okay. Because I don't think there's enough teams to pay all of these players. But let's just go over some shooting guards. Like Luke Kennard, other guys who are free agents this year. You're going to have Buddy Hield. You're going to have Malik Beasley. You're going to have Gary Trent Jr. You're going to have D'Anthony Melton. You're going to have Eric Gordon, Alec Burks, Gary Harris, Lonnie Walker. All of those guys, like you might think Buddy Hield, Gary Trent Jr., they made a lot more in their last contracts. They might think they're going to make $15 to $18 to $20 million a year. Maybe not. Malik Beasley played for the minimum last year. So did Lonnie Walker. So did Eric Gordon. Those guys, maybe a contender signs those guys for cheap. But all these players, in my mind, are comparable talent-wise to Luke Kennard. And are there any of those guys you think are better than Luke Kennard? There's several on that list I think are better than Luke Kennard. You could possibly get those guys for less than Luke Kennard's upcoming option. Then you look at like some small forwards. These are, again, some of these guys are going to sign for the minimum. These are all relatively useful rotation level players. Some of them a little bit better than rotation level. Like Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre might make $20 million per year. He might make less. If Kelly Oubre signs like a 2-year, $30 million deal, like, that seems feasible. But like Kelly Oubre, Royce O'Neal, Najee Marshall, Derrick Jones Jr., Gordon Hayward, Kyle Anderson, Sadiq Bey, he's injured, so maybe not him. Then there's other guys like, Obi Toppin, Simone Fontecchio. These are restricted free agents. You think about some of the bigs who could be available. We talk about Gogo Batadze and Jalen Smith was a player option. I mean, Daniel Tice, Andre Drummond. All these players, again, I think the majority of the names I just said will be available for less than the MLE. When you're deciding what to do with Luke Kennard, I think you have to consider whether or not some of those guys are better fits for the team. They fill a greater position of need. Maybe not. Maybe you think just keeping Luke Kennard's shooting around is enough. You see Sam Hauser playing in the NBA Finals. You're like, fine, let's just have a shooter. Let's have a floor spacer. Who cares how small our team is overall? And maybe I'm spending too much time on this Luke Kennard decision for the Grizzlies. Maybe we're just looking for stuff to talk about in June. But I will say, here's how I'm going to rank my reactions to the options of what the Grizzlies can do. The nightmare scenario is, to me, that the Grizzlies decline Luke Kennard's player option and then do nothing with that money. That is the nightmare scenario. If the Grizzlies pick up his option for next year, that's fine. I'll be happy. That's a good player to have around. If they decline his option and re-sign him, fine. Seems fine to me. I mean, maybe I'll change my mind when I see what the actual contract is, but that seems fine. All right. They kept him around. Okay. If they decline his option, I'll be happy initially because I'm like, okay, cool. We are now freed up to do other things. We have a little wiggle room under the first apron. We can make trades. We can use the Steven Adams trade exception that we generated. We could bring in a player without even sending out any salary. All that sounds great to me. But if they decline Luke's option, which again, my money's on that. If they decline his option and then the draft passes and there's no big trade, and then free agency opens and they don't use the MLE and they don't bring in a veteran, they don't sign anybody, to me, that's worst case scenario. And also, I think that's a very feasible outcome. Now, as far as what I would rather the team do, like this is something I feel like I have to do. I need to eventually rank my preferences for these things. Like, is my preference to be aggressive and make a big blockbuster trade for a center? Try to shake free Ivica Zubac, make that offer I keep talking about for Jared Allen? Or the simple free agent approach? Also, by the way, one free agent who I still see people mentioning is Nick Claxton. Guys, we can't get Nick Claxton. To get Nick Claxton, to sign him, there's no way we create enough cap space to sign him. So then you need to do a sign-and trade. To do a sign-and trade with the Nets, you have to give them something probably to incentivize them to do it. And then once you do a sign-and trade, you're hard capped again at the first apron to pay Nick Claxton enough money that he would sign with us. There's basically no way to stay under the first apron. So all that to say, my understanding is there's almost no way the Grizzlies end up with Nick Claxton. Now, one final thing, just one fun, I guess, final thing, is there is a rumor out there about the new city jerseys for the entire NBA. I don't know if there's any truth to this whatsoever, but there was a post on Reddit about the Grizzlies having a new city jersey for next year that would be red. It'd be a red jersey with white lettering with, quote, baby blue drop shadow. I think we can all guess maybe that baby blue would be teal, or the Grizzlies turquoise, their Vancouver colors, and the early Memphis colors. Who knows if any of this is accurate? I could imagine it. We've seen some alternate jerseys they sold in stores that were red, so maybe it would be a red jersey, and this report is somewhat accurate. We have no way of knowing. I would be, happy to see it. Also, we already expect and are planning to see Vancouver throwbacks for next season again, as it is the Grizzlies' 30th year as a franchise. I'm hoping those jerseys are going to be the white Vancouver throwbacks. If we have a white Vancouver throwback and then a red city jersey, I'd be pretty pleased about that. That change up to the Grizzlies colors. Basically any change for me would be a good one. Anyways, that can be the full episode for today. If you want to support the show, again, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Come join that Slack channel. Very, very active, talking all things Grizzlies this offseason. Anyways, hope you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.